I'm Clint. Welcome to Swatches Livestream number 40. I can't believe we're already at 40. Well, if you're new to the stream, let me welcome you. I am illustrator and art educator Clint Cearley. I'm best known for my work with Magic the Gathering, and the main reason for this live stream that we do on a weekly basis is for the art challenges. So we're going to be taking a look at some images that you, the viewers, have created and submitted, and we'll be reviewing those, looking at what works, what doesn't work, and I'll kind of be acting as your art teacher slash art director and help give you guys an idea of how to better prep yourself for the professional arena. So these are just a collection of my, let me switch over to my desktop. There we go. These are a collection of just my images. We'll leave this up here for a moment, allow people to come in here and join us live. If you're watching live, feel free to put your comments in the question box, over there on the side, and I will try to take your questions during this live stream. If you would put @Swatches in the title there, or the first word of your comment, so I know that it is directed at me and you're not talking to someone else. If you're watching this in recording, you might want to just scrub along in the time a little bit to skip the first couple of minutes to when we actually jump into the review process. Of course, we'll also be kicking off a new art challenge as well. Now, if you haven't been joining me in a while, then bear in mind that we have made some changes with the art challenges. That is, anybody can create an image and share it on the Swatches Facebook group. The link is in the description. But I will only be reviewing those who are patrons of Swatches. You become a patron, you need to go out to patreon.com/swatches and be at the $10 level or more, and you can be joined in the review process. Okay, well, we got a couple of people in here already. Ricardo, Christoph, and Downtown. All right, let me go ahead and get OBS out of the way. It looks like everything's green on that side. As usual, I do have some lag and little streaming issues on my side. So if it gets a little glitchy, you lose some frames, it's probably due to my connection and not yours. So just keep that in mind. Move that up a little bit. Ricardo says, can I ask a question on values before we move to the critique? Absolutely. Actually, it's really nice if you guys toss me some questions during the process, because just doing non-stop critiques can wear my brain out pretty well. So breaking it off of that and answering a question or two from the comments is actually a nice change. So feel free to toss that out there. Yeah. Igor, yeah, good to see you, man. Hey, everybody. Not submission. All right. Oh yeah, Igor. I generally forget to say it, but yeah. Hit the like button. If you like the comments that I'm giving, if you like the sort of feedback, if anything that I've said has helped improve your art understanding, then yeah, hit that like button. And, I'm trying to grow the channel, but YouTube, man, YouTube loves that like button. I can only hit it once, but you guys, if you'd hit it, that makes a big difference. YouTube will toss it up in front of more people. Hopefully it gets more traction there with the channel. Okay, quick recount. Let me move this out of the way. A quick review of what the people are trying to do if you're new to the channel. We had created this, which is a fictional game and fictional commission, basically giving you an idea of what it would be like in order to work on an actual commission. I would be serving as the art director. And you were to create basically a cross between a vulture and a dragon, or a two-legged dragon called the Drake. And the name of it would be Vathut, the Carrion Drake. It has basically the same ratios you have on a Magic Gathering card. And yeah, we went over last week and looked at a lot of the concepts and the sketches. And during that process, we looked more at the character design, or not the character, the creature design, and talked about composition, a bit of anatomy, and those sorts of issues. Now this week they have finished their image and they've submitted the finals. So we're going to be focusing less on the creature design and more on things like lighting and values, mood, colors, and that sort of thing. So now we're moving over to more of the finishing aspects of the image. Okay, Ricardo asks, hey Swatches, how do you pick good values for your shadows? Often, I have too much or no contrast. I lose the identity of the material or the form. I cannot find the sweet spot. Even in 3 flat local value scenarios like skin, dress, and hair. How do you pick good values? I usually have to read it twice because make sure that I'm reading it correctly. How do you pick good values for your shadow? How often I have too much or no contrast, and I lose the identity of the material or the form. I cannot find the sweet spot. Generally, I find that values start to becoming more complicated than they need to be when you start giving a wider range of values to each area. So if you have something like dress and hair, you got to know what the base value is of each one of those. Say that it's very dark hair, medium complexion with a very light dress. You know, we've got 3 separate major values that will distinguish from each other on that. Now, within each one of those, they're going to have a light to dark range, of course, in the light and shadow. And you don't want to have a white to black range on each object, on each thing. All right, each one needs to have its own range. So the dark hair, for instance, maybe it ranges from mediums to dark. So, and you're not going to get lights, and you're not going to get medium lights. You're just going to get mediums and darks. And with the skin, you're going to be in the midtones. You're going to go from mid-light to mid-dark. You're not going to have lights, and you're not going to have darks, only in the medium. Where on the other end, you're going to have the dress, which we're saying is a lighter dress, and it's going to go from light to medium. So you see that each element has its own particular value range, and that will help to separate each one of them. It's the common idea of everything should be allowed to go from white to black. And given the right, lighting scenario, yes, that can be the case. But often it's better to use a little artistic license. I wouldn't say license, but a little artistic control to simplify it, and it will actually look better if you scale back the values a little bit. Hopefully that helps you a little on that. Okay, move this out. Okay. Oh, now a note. Look, we want to go over the new challenge to start with, and we're going to go over that at the end. Let me think. Does it make any difference? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and kick off the new challenge so I don't forget it, and just tell you guys what's going on with that. Okay, so this is it. We had a couple of people asking about what about an action or a spell or something like that instead of just a character, creature, environment. And so I thought that was a good idea. Going along with the Spireville, which is the fictional fantasy game, same ratio of image, 3,000. Oh, I have that backwards. Apologize. This is incorrect. I will correct it when I upload it. The file for you to look at. It should be 3,000 width by 2,200 height. So I'll change that. The Seed of Renewal, New Art Challenge. Show a large seed suspended above the ground, or over the ground. Emanating from the seed is a life-giving magic that is spawning vibrant vegetation in the surrounding barren terrain. Maybe the magic first forms to the shape of a plant, then it becomes more solid, or maybe there's tendrils of magic that reach out to the surface, and vegetation spawns from there. Experiment to see what works and conveys the concept well. Do not include animals. The seed only has the power to affect fauna and the ground, not animal. The mood should be hopeful, renewal, kind of like beauty coming from ashes. Holy, and this is sort of like the sort of thing that you might get with a game commission, where they might include a little bit of extra just game knowledge. In this case, it would be holy and nature type characters may use the Seed of Renewal to reclaim areas that have been corrupted or cursed. Now, a note on this one is I will be traveling the week after Thanksgiving. So we will have a live stream next week, and then we'll be off a week, and then we'll be back the next week. So we'll have a week for the sketch process, and then 2 weeks before the final needs to be sent in. So just keep that in mind there. As I said, this will be put up on the Swatches Facebook group, which is at swatches.group. If you just type that in, it'll hot link you to the Facebook group. Ask to join. I pretty much okay everybody to join. And you can work on this. You can post your stuff up to the group, get some feedback from them. But again, only the patrons will get their stuff reviewed in the next live stream. Now, let me take a second here and talk about something that I haven't talked about in a while, which is reading over the brief and really kind of breaking down what it's saying and some of the options. Like, I mentioned a couple of options here, but there's more options to be going on. And there's other things to consider, like this is a magic seed. Okay, well, that doesn't mean it has to be any normal seed. You could do, it could be like an acorn style seed. It could be a very, I wouldn't say very standard kind of teardrop seed. Maybe it has a little bloom coming out of the top of it. Maybe the whole thing is made of crystal and it has like this kind of gleaming light coming off of it. Maybe it's made of gold or silver. I didn't say that it was a normal seed. Maybe it's some sort of artifact that has life energy that's, been imbued into it. And the magic, does it have like a root that's coming down and the roots are forming things? So these are the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about, sketching out some concepts, just write out some notes. This is one of my go-to things when I start working on a commission that has a decent amount of license to it. I didn't say what the environment was. So the first thing that probably comes to mind is, okay, you got like just some sort of rocky ground and there's a seed floating above it. Okay, well, what if it is inside of a cave? I didn't say that it wasn't, right? So what if all of a sudden it becomes that this seed is like shooting magic tendrils out to the ceiling and the walls, and now all of a sudden there's vines hanging down and there's trees sprouting out. And the other thing is the size. I didn't talk, maybe this takes place on a little 1 foot area and it's very intimate and you can see the process just starting. Or maybe it's very large. Maybe the seed is, some sort of, celestial seed, and the thing's 8 feet tall, and you have legit, redwoods growing up out of the ground. Like, you can see this effect from 100, 200 yards away. Where do you want to go with it? That's up to you. What's going to convey it well? I just haven't forgotten. I'm going to change this. It's going to take give me some more bandwidth back there. Okay. Alright, so I just wanted to go over that, and of course I will be putting this outline up on the group so that you can go check that out, download it or reference it as needed. So there you go. Swatches. I'm picking Anthony Jones as an example to study values at the moment, since he has a lot of grayscale stunning images. Oh yeah, Anthony Jones has a lot of great artwork, good distinct style, and he started with a more traditional sort of painting, illustrative sort of look, and then transitioned into what most people know him now as using a lot of kind of geometrics, and he also uses Painter, I believe, for his program. that allows a variation. So like every time that you make a paint stroke, it uses a different brush shape. And you don't know what it is. It randomizes what the brush shape is based on your brush library. And so he gets these crazy cool patterns and images. He goes by Android, also Android Anthony Jones. Everybody, feel free to go out there and take a look at his stuff. Very, very cool. I've met him a couple of times. Okay, now let's take a look at the finals. And as usual, we'll just be going through these alphabetically. And we've got, what? I think I counted 18 of them in total. And we'll just be waiting for it to let me in Photoshop. There we go. Okay, as we're approaching this, if it was a commission, the first thing I want to do is look at it little. You know, serving as the art director and also more of the art teacher, I got to look at it little. Does it work? I feel like it's sort of on the middle. It sort of works. I can pick out the basic shape. Now, the major thing there is, why does it work when it's little? Well, mainly due to good silhouette. And that will be the same for all of the images. We'll try to take a look at them small, and the silhouette is the main thing, whether it reads or not. Let me make a new layer. Just a usual brush there. Yep. I'm curious. I was curious, like, if you do this, then all of a sudden you've got him turning, like, you've got his attention. I don't know if it wouldn't be that big of a change. I feel like that's more dynamic. This one is leading you off the scene, and all the attention is just going out this way. All right, we're looking over here to where there's nothing. All the attention is towards something where there's nothing. But if we were to turn the head, maybe I told you to do the head the way it is. I don't remember. But smoothing. I don't need smoothing right now. Slows the computer down too much. Oh, we got some more people in here. Martin, could you put in a PDF sum of this contract with explanation just for practice to see how it goes? I don't think this one necessarily needs a PDF. I probably will go out there and take a look for some reference images. I just didn't take the time to do it this morning. But I'll see if I can find some reference images just to give you guys a basic direction of take a look at these and see what they do and incorporate that a little bit. If I do find a good batch of images, I'll probably toss them in together into a PDF. We'll see. But art directors don't always include a lot of reference images, or so that's also something too. I'll try to do some, but I think like something like that might. It's also an option. It's just something that came to mind, so I want to mention it. Something that is missing from a lot of the images is the character shapes for scale. Yeah, that is true. There is the issue of scale on some of these. I don't think this one is as much because by default you're going to Igor mentioned that. By default you're going to assume that the eye level is at human height unless you really have a reason otherwise. So I would naturally think that this thing is considerably larger than I am because it's above my eye level. But if you've got some different perspective going on, then yeah, it starts becoming more important that you do have something in there for scale reference, because you don't know how tall or short you were supposed to be in this image. Okay. One moment, guys. One moment. I just heard something crash in the other room. Hey, sorry for that delay. No, I don't know. I'll have to go scout it out later and see what it was. But something fell. Something broke. Okay. Okay, I think this is one of those cases that we're getting too dark too fast. And let's readjust the values a little bit. On a misty scene like this, a good go-to option that you're incorporating in general is that things get lighter as they go away from you, and that is a really good way to build depth into the scene. And it's also something to keep in mind that if you have enough atmosphere to create this sort of depth in the image, it's also something that is going to make things out of focus. So consider the things in the background becoming more out of focus. And that can also help pull the attention up towards the foreground because it will be sharper. Let me do that. Let me just toss that in. And there can be some variance in this, right? There could be some fog coming out from between these layers. Maybe there's a fog here. And some fog doesn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be white. It can hit that mid-tone so that it lightens things darker than it, and then it darkens things lighter than it. Like that grass back there. That grass is much too dark for the distance that it should be at. So that all needs to be lightened up. Now I think this is the primary thing that you need to focus on with this one, is adjusting some of the values and with a little of the lighting. And because fog likes to set as low as possible, that things will be lower at the bottom and actually get darker as they go up. Even if the top is slightly further away from us, it can look that way because the fog is simply lightening things at the bottom. And then back here, thing with very foggy scenes have indirect light. And I think that that's something you can take advantage of in this, is the fact that this doesn't necessarily need to be black, and it actually allows you to use a bit more mid-tones so things don't get lost as easy. And if you do include a light, perhaps a little bit more of a rim light. Okay, along on this, and I'm going to touch on a couple more things on this image than I am on other images, because it's the first image up, and a number of the things that I would mention across more images, the other images, applies to this one as well. So I'm going to just kind of talk about it on this image, and then I'll refer to it back to it on the other one and say, okay, now remember how we did such and such? Something to consider here is like putting down red, like maybe it has a reddish skin, right? Say that we're putting down that kind of reddish skin, and that red isn't just on the face and it's just on the wings. You know, I do like the touch that you carried some of that red over to the wings as well. But I'm thinking that it just has a naturally sort of red skin. So you're putting that down, and then you come back with, and I'll have like a bristly brush that looks kind of like that, right? And instead of drawing every individual scale, you create the scales not by like outlining them with their own little shadows and stuff. You create them by using individual brush strokes, and you let the brush stroke do what you need. You can change them up, you know, which stroke you want. Most of you guys know Stefan Koidel. He posts a version of this character out on the Facebook group, and I think he used this same sort of approach. He put down like the base layer of the skin, and then he came back and he added in the kind of feathery stuff, and maybe I think he covered most of it. And it's the same sort of approach that I would have used, is to do that, and then you come back and you can, you know, hit up little highlights or some different tones on different ones. And that way it's still more brush stroke, it's more artistic, and it has more layers to it, rather than going in and drawing each one. This is all pretty good. It's rough, it's kind of ugly. Okay. Where am I? Oh, that one. There. Yeah, this is another one where it's just going to black into white so quickly. Might be better to, like, if you were to darken the top of this, then all of a sudden it's not just this glowing ball like that. You also think if the light is down there, it's going to be emanating out this way, but it's not going to be lighting the top of it up over the top of the head. And that's just going to be catching the cool light, right? So maybe we come back with a bit more of a violet or slightly more gray tone. And you can put that red down, and then that blue tone, that cooler tone from the sky, is going to be hitting some of that. But anything being hit by that eye is going to have that reddish tone. And this allows you to work in a little bit more color into the head. I kind of like the idea of those being like considerably lighter. It's got the light horns. Same thing with that. Like that's getting really quite light. There's no reason something facing upwards at the light source would necessarily be getting black on the side of it. Yeah, I will try to... I was just taking a look at the chat. Yes, Henry, I announced the next one, but I'll try to cover it again at the end of the stream. And, of course, I'll be posting it up on in the group as well. So, something like that, you can see how by just getting a little dull, kind of cool tone, hitting up the top of that, hitting up a couple of places along the top of the head, especially on areas like the beak and the little horns that don't have much color of their own. They're pretty grayed out. That this is a good place that you can pull on a little of that extra color. That tongue is getting really bright out in there. But that red pop is good. And you can let that affect a couple of things there. So, little changes there. Those sort of changes, or if you go around each part of it and incorporate those sort of value changes and adding in just that little extra color for the cool versus warm sort of thing going on, working with some of the edges in the background, it's really going to get this image and just step it up another level. But that would be the next step of what you're doing with it. Yep, good stuff. Anne Marie, thank you. Appreciate you joining the challenge and being out on the Patreon. Okay, yeah, okay. I remember the head of this one. I said we need to pull out a little bit. Okay, so you pulled out, and we've got some of the leg, the wing coming out here. Okay, I remember that. All right, now I still think the head is kind of cool, but you got ahead of yourself with a lot of this detail. You got really far ahead of yourself. Before you figured out what the value scheme was going to be, I feel like you just kind of jumped in there with all of this scale work, all this little noodly bit down here. We've got all this veining. We've got like photo textures in the background. We've got bunches of individual hairs. But on the whole, like if you get it little, that doesn't work. The values, let's set a black and white. Why not? What is this? Oh, it's set in CMYK, that's why. Yeah, if you submit an image, try to put it in RGB. There's some things that Photoshop, it doesn't work unless it's in RGB. It won't do it if you're in CMYK. Okay, so that is a black and white filter, essentially. And you can see it just gets lost in there. You just can't make out what's going on with that. So, you know, before you get into the detailing stage and you're doing things like scales and veining and grass and hair, then you should have your basic line drawing made. And it's at that stage that you need to start working out what the values are. I'm going to just ignore color for a moment. And again, we can do the same sort of thing. We need to establish every area having its own value range. And foggy scenes don't necessarily have a light sky. It has a little volume there, lightness there. And they tend to get a bit lighter down towards the horizon. Now, him being dark there is a nice silhouette, but the wings themselves, all of the wing part, they could be lighter, right? Because we need to be able to differentiate this from the body and from the stones. So all of that, a bit lighter. And then it can gradually get darker, you know, as it's coming to the body. Maybe the feathers change colors, that sort of thing. Now the background is probably going to be lighter, so that can stand out. Now I'm going to assume that this flesh color here is going to be somewhere near the leg value down here. A little background showing through. Is that the top of the... I'm not sure what that is. I almost feel like that should be background. And that lighter shape would help for the top of this thing to show up. The gravestone. And then, so again, I'm always talking about this. Light against dark, light against dark. And there's a lot of other things that you should eventually get to as well, right? It should be soft edges against hard edges, warm against cool. There's there's other more nuanced juxtapositions that you can do, but the first and biggest one you got to get going is values. You got to get the right value against the other value. You can also get into things like shapes, you know, one kind of shape against another kind of shape. So, but don't worry about that right now. I'm just saying that those exist. Eventually, you know, start caring about that. But right now, what we have to do is create a pattern of light against dark. So that right there, at least I can look at it now and be like, there's separate elements, and I can identify the different elements. Okay, that would be the major thing that you would need to do next. You need to step back, emotionally detach a little bit, which I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just saying that it's what needs to be done, and just say, okay, that was a concept. But if I can do that, then I can do that again and better. So unless this was a total fluke, you can do it again. But let's get what you did and just bring in a little more knowledge. Now, I like some of your color choices here. I like the transition of the purple to the orange. But let's make sure that that color idea is happening throughout. All right, so you've got like red here and pink, but the red and the pink of the head don't go with the violet and the orange. So, you know, something you could consider that might be kind of cool is if the red primarily comes from these feathers, but then the, you know, I'm gonna just try it. I'm just curious. Color. Like if you get the purple and the skin is like this light purple tone. Then, you know, you have more of a pop of red from that. Then the beak. Well, I'm trying to think is how can you use fewer colors together? Because you don't necessarily need pink and red and violet and orange. That's a bit too much. 3 is probably the max that you want to do. Generally, with a creature design or a character design, what you want to do is have 80% of it to be harmonious. That is like an analogous color scheme, all similar. Have a discordant color that pops out from that, and something that works that would be good on this one is even let's just make a new one. There we go. Is if it was, let's say the violet, but you know, like very grayed violet is the normal overall tone, right? Because we want that face to pop. And if we're taking cues from vultures, buzzards, then we want the face to pop, but then you want that red to really stand out. And that's going to happen if the rest of the body isn't nearly as bright in color. So the wings are more prominent in color than the red is. But that's not what we want. We want the attention on the face rather than the wings. Then maybe you add a little of that red tone, kind of in a veining sort of thing at the ends. You know, as the wings go out, the further out on the wings are, they get a bit of that red tint on them. You know, that sort of idea. And then this also could be a lot more of that kind of gray. I think it would make sense, like if it's a creature that is I want to say its environment is sort of a foggy, misty, sort of rocky area, then a darker, grayish body would make more sense in a biological adaptation sort of way. Yeah. Okay. A lot of good topics on that. Plenty to get you going with, I'm sure. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of where to go from there. Any comments? Okay. Blue Mist. Not sure how you say that name. I'll call you by your last name. Vinden. Okay. You got good curve to this body. We probably talked about that in the original sketch. I don't remember what was said or what wasn't said, but it's got good flow to it. This is good pattern. If you missed the earlier stream, then for a creature like a dragon, it has kind of a serpentine quality to its body, then it's really important to try to create the flow. Now you see the flow on the line of action, as you might call it, or see it being called in various books, is follows down the spine. And a creature like this, it's going to try to create a natural flow to itself. And that's done well. I like it, grabbing onto the side there. The background, maybe a bit more attention to it, but it really doesn't need too much more. I'm just thinking that the whole thing could be... Let's see. Let's set this to darken at maybe 40%. Marco, no, you have not missed yours yet. We're only in about 3 so far. I was just thinking that, if we tone the sky down a little bit, it actually gives more contrast around here where the mist is and that area of the background. Another thing to be... be concerned with, but is the folding of the wings. The wings being down like this, kind of closed around him, makes him feel a bit more like he's being threatened rather than he is the thing that is threatening something else. And I would consider adjusting it so that the wings are out more. So he's expanding his territory instead of not. Oh, oops. Instead of trying to contract. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. And it also breaks the boundary. Actually, if you gave him 4 wings, or split wings, that could be kind of cool. I hadn't thought about it, but that could be kind of cool. Okay. What? Oh, that's still set to color. Why is it doing that? I'm just doing really quick paint out here in order for you to get the idea of what I was talking about. And then that wing can continue doing his little thing back in there. So that feels a bit more threatening, right? Than this. This is more, this is more defensive. This is more aggressive. I think that would be a lot better. It wouldn't take a lot of paint out or adjustment to do. Additionally, this also creates a fairly annoying tangent where all of these feathers are running up to that rock, and I presume that this rock is actually quite a bit further in the background. It's just a weird tangent where it looks like his feathers are pushing against it, and doing that sort of thing would really break it from that. Something else to consider is really getting those colors on that red to pop more, and we're not getting much out of those, but something like that could get them to pop a lot more. So there. And I wouldn't worry about the cast shadow on that. We don't have a lot of direct light, so I would just, otherwise yeah, we don't have a lot of direct light, so I would just let that color go all the way up. Otherwise, it looks like there's kind of a bifurcation down his face. Yeah. There we go. Hopefully that helps. I think it would really just step up the energy of the image. I love the overall design. I gotta say, these are one of my favorite wings of anybody that submitted stuff. I really love that you didn't go overboard with the detail-y work on the wings, but just the flow of the black feathers is particularly nice. And just kind of the disheveledness to it, but yet you'd still think it could fly. All right, good work, good work. Love seeing it. Still safe. Swatches, how many hours per week do you typically spend with a pen or brush in your hand creating artwork? Oh, Ben. That's a good question. How many hours a week do I spend the pen or brush creating artwork? It really depends on the project. Like this last week, not that much, because I was working on a PDF, an ebook, and so I'm doing less art creation than I am doing writing and layout and just basic little simple illustrations, which it's not really artwork. I'm just creating a little kind of a diagram thing. When I'm working on commissions, then it's pretty much full time. I'd be saying that, it's up near your regular 40-hour work week. With that, if I'm working on, like, I recently finished, I guess I can go ahead and tell you guys. I can't show you, but I can tell you. I've done a batch of images for the new Artifact game coming out by Valve, based on Dota. So I will be sharing those images, and I had 3 of those in my last batch, and I was putting in at least 40 hours a week onto those things. But it usually does that. It depends on my project. If I'm working on commissions, it's like almost all the time on that. And then if I'm working on, like Swatches stuff, then it's not much. I probably grab maybe 10 hours a week or something into side projects or long-term commissions. Okay, this one is Christoph Ott. Okay, another one where the values, I think, is the major thing going on here. The pose reads, I understand what's going on here. Oh, and kind of, all right, Ben, kind of going off of that, just another heads up is, once I finish the Understanding Mood book, I probably am going to be taking a break from the PDF ebook thing for a while. It's good to do, but it results in me not creating artwork for prolonged periods of time. And I need to be able to be getting some of my own stuff out there. So we'll probably be coming up with different kinds of rewards after the mood book is done. But we'll get to that. I'll just kind of let you guys know. Okay. I'm trying to think about his pose. That's one of the first things is the pose working? And it kind of is. But a couple of things with a pose that I would consider is putting its legs aren't going to be, it looks like it's running wide like this, instead of putting his feet closer underneath it. So I could say again that leg and moving him over here. And then this one's going to be coming up towards the middle, right? So his legs are going to be trying to stay in front of each other, or they might even overlap each other, depending how where in the walk cycle you are. The other thing is, if that's this way, this is probably that way. that is hips and shoulders go opposite to each other in order to stay balanced. So if we were to grab this and reverse it, oh, I think I have snap on. Yep. Oh, turn snap off for a second. That would actually be a bit more realistic, that the one up higher would be the one across from that hip. Yeah, so yeah, kind of keep that in mind and make it a little bit more natural as it goes that direction. What else? We're getting. Let's just turn that off for a second. We'll talk about the values and stuff from this point. You forgot the daylight savings time took effect. Yeah, but we're not that far into it. Man, have we been into it an hour already? Good grief, almost. We're only like 4 images in. Okay, this is another one. Take a look at the values of some of those images in the PDF. You know what, I'm not going to go try to find it right now. But what we want to do is, you know, like I talked at the very beginning, the value range. The value range of this background does not need to reach to medium darks. It doesn't. It needs to be lights, maybe as far as mediums, but probably just lights and medium lights. So we need to lighten all of this up so that that does not compete with the value of the beastie. That all needs to be lightened up. That. And we have a bit of light down there at the bottom, but yeah, all that needs to be simplified. And then the top of this guy can be a bit lighter. We've got some light coming down on him, right? So it's just a general top light. And the same thing with this. We're getting really black really quick here. And what we're doing is we're losing all of the form. So let me grab some of that red. Anything basically that is not just being completely occluded. Let's have some red in it. Sorry, nose is itching. And like we did on the other one, you can come in here and just add a bit of cool tones across some of that. And then down here, consider adding some bigger feathers. This is more like fur than feathers. Or just let it go to ugly, ugly skin, you know? And with the wings, yeah, like this, the white inside on the shadow side, that all really needs to be toned down. Everything on this wing should be darker than everything in the background. The distinct value with that, and you may connect more of the body there. The wings can connect more like that. And then the background. Essentially, think of it like everything loses value the further away it is from you. It just, that's the way it works. It's a distance-based value system. Closer it is, darker it is. Further away, lighter it is. And it can create very simple values. Yeah. Something on that line, obviously it would take quite a while, but you can see the sort of difference it would make. If you want to go with the greenish color scheme, you can do that. Or with just the slightly, you know, greenish light. And then use that subtly on the shapes of the creature itself, right? On the stuff that's facing upwards, you know, it gets a bit of that light on it. Yeah. Okay, that's good on that one, I think. Good topics. I'm trying to find different topics, kind of bring up on each one of them so other people can learn from them as well. All right, I gotta pick up the pace. I always slow down too much. This one has a really nice sort of, you know, prehistoric, I want to say almost dinosaur feel to it, which I think is a fun take. I think that's cool. The hieroglyphic design work here is nice. Let's see, what else? I feel like this just isn't getting the pop that it should. I'm wondering about making some value changes here. We don't have any of the lights. Yeah, if we want the light coming in like that, that's not bad. But if that's going to be the primary light source, then I would recommend pushing a bit more. Not that it's brighter, but there's just, let's change the angle of it so that we're getting more of it across the guy. So instead of just one little sliver, that we get a nice, you know, fuller lighting of it on the guy. And then it also allows us to let more of that red pop, because that red would really show up well with that light on it. But unfortunately, we're not getting much of it on there. So the very color that should be popping out on this image isn't getting much attention. I'm just going to add a bit more, kind of let it stand out extra there. By the way, I want to say the execution on this it's fine. Clint, really nice execution. I love a lot of these subtle things. Like there's this nice little cool tone here. There's a lot of variation of tones along in here. The edges are nice and well done. You've got some of the smaller things like the cracks and the crumbling in this. You've obviously studied some I want to say the ancient culture sort of artwork, because it totally fits with that. There's a lot of really good execution stuff in here. So I want to say that you're doing great work. All we're doing is making some small changes to it to make it pop a bit more. There. So there, the light actually starts showing up more, and we're not getting it anywhere else either, which makes me feel like maybe the light coming through this could be a great way to bring in some pop of color. Right, this skin flap is usually fairly translucent. And then that can cast really warm light down on this part of the body. And you get that similar tone back there on that one where the light's kind of coming through that one. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit back there because you can associate those two together. Although that's not a very useful shape. Something you could consider here would be a better solution is to have that going off with a curve to it. You know, so we can follow the curve instead of just without. Then you could have like the tail you know, doing this sort of thing. So it becomes three-dimensional. It's wrapping around the tower. Grabbing some of these colors back here. Now we have these really nice cool tones, blue tones out here, and you can just use that to highlight kind of. Now, you know, you can see that sort of thing. Yeah. We're just looking at ways to add a bit more pop to it, and this is something. Let's see, goodies, swatches. Okay, I came across a file that I had saved years ago, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. I should show the guys. And I thought it was in here. Ah, here it is. I'm not saying that this is necessarily something you have to do, but consider taking a look at some of these other animals. Really exotic eyeballs. Take a look at these things. I don't remember where I found this. I could put it out on the Facebook group for you guys if you're interested. But the shapes around the eyes, the way the iris and the pupil is created, the colors in the eye itself, they're just bizarre. I mean, look at some of the designs on these guys. It's fantastic. And they're pretty good quality photos. Look at that. That is just unreal. But yeah. You know, I was just trying to think of something that would make that eye maybe even pop a bit more. So, along that line. Anything else? Almost feel like he doesn't have quite enough room. Right? I almost feel like I would get... Oh, that's not what I meant. I would get all of this and just bring him down about that much. Yeah. And just give him a little bit more breathing room in this image. So it feels like he has somewhere to look. Otherwise, he's so close to the edge that we're kind of bumping his little beak. Yeah, you can get the idea. Something like that. You just feel like, yeah. Small stuff. You're at the small stuff, man. I love it. Love it. Really good piece. Hopefully that helps you. Yep. Eyeballs. Cool. Yep. Thank you. Dennis. Okay. Maybe I need to start just picking out like the two major things and just talking about them instead of talking about so many things. Okay. I mean, the first thing that concerns me is... Okay, well, the obvious thing is this is not finished. All right. Dennis is not considering this a finished image, so I'm not going to be basing it on that. Again, we're looking down on the creature, which makes it feel... I want to say make it feel little. I don't think it's little because I do have something to compare the size to, but it makes it feel inferior, like we're the ones threatening it instead of vice versa. So, compositionally, just kind of design-wise with the image, you're starting with it stacked against you in that way, whereas if you could start with him being on our eye level or above our eye level, then he automatically feels more threatening. But right now, he doesn't so much. Also, we want to take a look at the composition, just the usage of space, that most of this image, that is half of the image, does not really have the subject in it. It's like, oh, there's a wing there. Yeah, there's a wing here too. I mean, like, this is what's important, right? So if we could put that maybe in the middle of the scene, let's grab this. If in doubt of how to lay out the scene, fill the frame with the subject. Okay. Now, at least we've got a good picture of the creature itself. That's another thing, that if you were doing this on a card and it's getting printed, yeah, the card's going to be printing, you know, at least for my view, how big this is on my monitor, it's going to be like this. In which case, not only is it small to begin with, but you've got that small canvas and then split it in half and then put the subject in that half, instead of trying to use most of the canvas to tell the image. There's also the issue with the viewer being able to fill in the details. Like, we know what wings look like. You don't necessarily need to show us the entire wing. We know what tails look like. You don't necessarily need to show us all the tail. Or if you just show us, you know, one tip of the wing and the beginning of the other wing, we can just fill in the, you know, the rest. So don't be afraid to do that. You still run into the issue of like scale, but you could just get things like this background tomb or this tomb, and you're just going to move them closer. Like, you're just going to put a doorway, you know, back in here, and then maybe there's a doorway, you know, like right in here that's closer to us, or maybe there's a little trail, and we kind of get the idea of, you know, how big a trail is that's leading through, you know, this image. And so you could still have some scale stuff in there because of that. Or maybe he's, you know, stepping on you know, there's like a broken wagon here, or, you know, a wagon wheel. You know, we know how big wagon wheels are, and that's just kind of grown up in the grass. And it doesn't have to be a big feature, but it immediately lets us know the scale. The next thing you want to do is kind of what you're doing right now. You're just setting a basic value and color range. I like some of the colors you're going with here. Make sure that the red is dominant and everything else is sub to that. So the green tone, good. Darken it, half the saturation, but to let that red pop even more. You want that red face kind of really coming out from all the grayness and the dullness of the surrounding area. Good stuff, Dennis. Thanks for the entry. Gilherm. Okay, Gilherm. It's got, the whole thing's got a good mood to it. I get a graveyard sort of swampy feel. I think that all works. The pose, okay. That's a little odd, just the 90-degree bend there. Consider making it even further out or making it come in. But just the perfect 90 I find a little odd. Or lengthening it so that, you know, that section of the arm is a bit longer, causing it to have a bit of a different angle. This is just a very human proportion of forearm, you know, upper arm to forearm. So sort of bend that you would expect on a human. So we just, I'm thinking to get out of that a little bit. Okay. It's a weird tangent here where this building is like, the shape of it is based on where the guy is located. So check that. Like, even if you just pushed it back here, it would be better than just right up there next to him. I like the trees. The trees are good. The trees are good. I like the addition. Gives a little better stage for him. The colors and the lighting is another one. Go out there. Make sure that you're looking at some good reference material for foggy scenarios. And, you know, the main thing to note there is ambient. Things don't have much cast shadows. Cast shadows don't wholly exist in a very foggy scene. because the light gets bounced around in the atmosphere so much that it becomes omnidirectional. It's not coming from a certain direction. You could do like omnidirectional soft lighting on everything in the background and say maybe there's one patch of light that's kind of, you know, catching the side of the head, and maybe it's like that part. But then out here, it gets back to omnidirectional. Let's tone all that down a little bit. Color schemes also get muted, right? Because the foggy scene is going to tint everything heavily to its particular tone. So we're going to lose on that. This wood, that wood is still going to just be very flat. Things are much, much flatter in this sort of lighting scenario. And then again with, let's see, let's give like a red overlay, red. We want that to pop more, right? Those colors are quite dull. And we can let some of this go dull, like the body. We want that red to stand out. Yeah. All right, that's the direction I'd go with it. Just muting down a lot of those values, flattening them down, unless you want a directional sort of light that's breaking through, that's hitting the face to make it pop out a bit more. Watch the tangent there in the background. I think consider adding some little plants. We're going to get some sort of mossy stuff or little plants going on there. You don't have to be detail-y with it. You can just use some brush strokes and indicate that sort of thing. Gilherm, Oliveira, the other Gilherm. Okay. Okay, going more with the brown. All right. One thing it does need is a bit of stage. It doesn't have anything. Even just some trees, some shrubs, some rocks, something to set the stage here. Also, we need a bit of overlapping with the background and the other elements. Maybe something overlapping part of him. Maybe some grass overlapping. Because there's no depth in the image. It's just this. This is the only plane in the image. So it's very shallow, which isn't necessarily bad, but we want some sort of depth to it. The design was looking pretty good. I like the red pop there. Yeah, I remember talking about this, and there was... I still feel like that pose is off, and I'm debating what the solution is to that. Yeah, I feel like something like that, but you would need to move the whole thing over. All right. Back over this way. The other thing is, it feels like it's just standing up. Maybe that's what it is. I'm trying to think. I get that he'd be like standing up if he's, coming into land or he's about to take off. He'd be stretching out. But otherwise, I would expect to see, okay, we get a big, rib cage going on. And then we'd have the body going away from us, not just down, but away. So like the chest is overlapping the hips. And so we have depth on the body itself. I was just kind of thinking with the tail. Yeah, that's is like he's just standing up. And these sort of creatures, I feel like, you know, especially with the tail going out, they lengthen themselves. They're primarily a horizontal creature. So consider trying to get that depth. It would take a decent amount of resketching or working with it to do that. So I mean, I don't have the time to. I'm already running late. Yeah, this is another one where some overlay with a bit of color pop to make that come out a bit more, and also throwing in some of the blue. There's a lot of blue, sort of dark blue violet that you can find in the feathers of like a vulture. So I think you just put in brown as like a base tone, and that's cool. But coming in here doing that, adding some of the cooler tones on some like feather areas. It also lets, again, that red to pop out a bit more, because right now he's really muddy and there's really no color or anything. And maybe some of it is pinker, right? It's more like skin. I think of which one would work. Maybe there's spots where it's a bit more of some sort of skin color. And it brings in a bit more color to it. Yeah. All right, take those things. I'm curious to, see what you're going to do with it. I think that can turn out into something nice. Jacob. Jacob, that reminds me, I grabbed the face of this guy. I'm using it in the thumbnail of the video. If you, don't want me to, let me know. I'll trade it out for something else. Now, this is another one. It feels like it's taking the direction of like a dinosaur sort of creature, which has an interesting look. Okay. I like the use of the space. Look how nice. Look how much of this is being used by the creature. I mean, that's what this image is, and that's one of the reasons it works really well when it's small, because it has a lot of presence and volume in the frame. So that's good. The distance, you have a basic idea of rocks, trees in the background, so it's pretty straightforward. Something down here is you can consider throwing some of this to be a bit fuzzier, not just throwing in some light over it for fog, which is true, but also just kind of hazing it out a little bit. Yep. And this one's coming up to you. I think it's definitely more man-bird than it is dragon. Depending on the art director, they might be looking for some of those changes. I think these shoulders is one of the things that's kind of throwing me off, is that it has a very humanoid shoulders with neck, but the neck is just long. So what would I do if I wanted to change that? One thing is the neck is very narrow, and it gets like a lot bigger at the head, and I get that the head's coming to us, so it kind of looks bigger. But if the body, was rounder, and the neck connected I was thinking, like, if keeping the spine higher is something that you see in dragons a lot. Like, it'll come up there. And then you can get the emaciated thing by pulling the ribcage up and then letting the stomach go narrow. You know, so it gets slimmer here. And you kind of have a, you know, a bulge there for the shoulder. You have this one, you know, the chest muscles can kind of come across there. So you're creating a diamond pattern with that. Let me do it again. You know, this is a sort of shape you're going with there. And then the rib cage. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, instead of trying to build it up here, what we're trying to do is get that spine to be back up on top, because he's not doing anything to push his shoulders up, and we're trying to get that spine back on top, and then that allows us to pull the rib cage up and then slim up the, you know, if you wanted to follow that center line, it could be more like that. And the leg is also somewhere where you, maybe, you know, if you wanted to make him look emaciated. Not big changes. I think that would be a better creature design, moving it back over to creature. That it feels like it has a better anatomical feel for the way that it would need to work. It would also have, you know, a bit more neck to hold up the length of it and the size of the head. It's nice and sharp, good image. I think you should be happy with it. Consider breaking up some of this though, with like some smaller feathers. So it's not just boom, there's this sharp razor line of where the feathers start, but it's got other little feathers, and it sort of, you know, builds up into the long part. Or even if the whole thing starts changing color. I like the color variation, but maybe the whole thing starts changing color towards, you know, like, you know, the end of the arms. So it has larger overall gradients to the body. Yeah. Good stuff, Jacob. Good stuff. Jonathan. Oh, yeah, the 3D one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Okay, what we get here? Oh, lots of progress. Yeah. The other one was very, very simple forms, and we talked about adjusting the pose. Okay. And the colors are looking good. The lighting has that good, really soft sort of light to it. Got the head turned around. Get more arc here. That was good. Let's pull up here. I did a lot of nuance work in here. I like the feathers. Good skin work with the way it kind of looks like it's just draped over this kind of skeletal frame. Okay. So where do we go from here? This leg's kind of getting me a little bit, where I have to look at it for a second to be like, is he stepping? Is he stepping? Is that right? Yeah, okay, the legs feel... like this foot's way forwards, so it's way up here towards, like, it's underneath past his shoulder, or at his shoulder, which means there's a lot of weight on the back end of this body that's not being held up. I just don't see his weight being held up, because the wings, yeah, they're visually big, but they're not very heavy. I'm thinking... This is one of those I don't have like a really fine guideline as to how this needs to work. I'm just kind of like, what would feel right is the best I can do right now. I feel like if this was like back there a bit more, it would seem more natural. Yeah. Consider working those legs and getting them so that they're planted further back. Then that one can be coming forwards. You know, he can be extending forwards, and usually, like, if they're going to be moving forwards, their foot curls up like that so that it won't drag the ground, and they can move it like that and then extend it out. Yeah. Then that back foot could be... Let's see if I can do it simple. Like, the back foot could be coming up, and it's kind of doing that sort of thing, right? The heel is coming off of the ground. Then the other one's coming down, and it's curling under, so that it won't drag on the ground, right? And so I think if you work with that a bit more, it's going to sell the believability of the creature better. What else? I think we need more down, like, he should have some more feathers, like maybe down the top of his neck. Let's add some of those. Then you can transition from one color to the other color as it goes down. Again, that is something that you see in a lot of good creature designs, especially for video games, is gradient changes across the body. It's fading from this color through the feathers to a different color down the back. It's fading from, you know, one color of one part of the wing to another color. And these large, sort of subtle gradient changes are very nice visually. It gives a flow to the character, and your eye likes to follow that. Okay. Anything with this? The eyes don't really pop out. They either need to be really dark, or they need to be considerably lighter, so that the value of them will stand out from the reddish tone of the face. This is somewhere else. I don't know. You probably just haven't got into the little noodly stuff. And it's stuff that you might not even want to do in 3D. You might just be faster to do in 2D. It's adding like the little hairs, you know, coming up, just kind of growing around the face. It's adding in the little grimy stuff that gets caught on the beak. And just grunging him up, that sort of thing. Yeah. And you can do the same thing, you know, on the rest of the body as it applies where needed. I like the little background thing. I feel like this is standalone, though. This is something I actually talk about in the newest chapter. Number significance, that if there is a singular anything in the image, it gives it importance. So if you don't want something to be really important, then make sure there's more than one of them. It's like this structure back here. Consider adding another faded one, you know, back in here. And then maybe a broken pillar back over here. just so that that doesn't feel so significant. And we need it back there, but make sure there's a couple more, and it won't feel that is so important. It's also just perfectly placed, like it's just very centered and very framed nicely in this particular area. Consider adding a couple more, like the whole structure goes off the image, and therefore it's not just so perfectly framed right there. Yeah, some more of that sort of stuff. Maybe there's some broken on the ground, right? You know, this sort of thing. Stones laying around. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's enough probably to get you going on with. Feel free to work on it, and of course put it back out on the group and get some feedback from the rest of everybody. Carlos says, I've got a class of Craig Mullins. Man, good for you. That's awesome. I'd love to get a class from him. Sometimes ago, where he says that by design, each plane should have a value and color gradient following the rules of light. Good tip. I would endorse that. Leonardo. It's a cool creature design here. Pull up in here so all the viewers can get a nice look at it. Look at that guy. Very unwelcoming. That's exactly what we're looking for. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what can we do with this? Add a bit more punch. Colors and lighting. Compositionally, it works pretty well. I'd say all of this works pretty well. The background has a few changes. Yeah, give me that. It's another one I think that we could go in another 20% on the character without really losing anything. I mean, that the excess out there isn't really telling us anything. So let's just do that. And then with the values, it's another spot that we just need to haze out that back part. Not quite so contrasty. And things just become base tones. It's less about the values than it is just... I mean, it's less about light and shadow than it is just the base tones of each thing standing out from the thing around it. These guys back here are just so faint. I don't think you need them. I mean, you might add like these guys back here, but we don't need the one all the way in the back, or that one. Little shapes there. Little tombstones lost in the mist. This is, yeah. And we're not going to have enough fog right there. We might as well just let that go darker. Yeah. Okay. We're just trying to get that attention back on him, because the more contrast that there is elsewhere in the image, more it's kind of going to draw away from what we have on the character. This is another spot that we can add a bit more color into it. What you have is good. I think it's better to have a bit more toned down base that has good values. Then you can add a bit of color, like with an overlay layer. Let's go back in with like the kind of the red. Grab something a bit brighter. And you're going a bit more violet with it, so maybe it has a splash of violet on some of these. And then you're going with a cooler, so consider a little bit of blue some of the other areas. And then basically anything that is going to not be having a cast shadow on it. Like down here, that leg can just go pretty dark. It doesn't have any direct light on it. Even a direct view to the occluded light, the ambient light. Make sure we're getting some of that covering up. All right, the grass is going to cover up a bit of the leg, and one of the things that I heard years ago is don't make it look like somebody's standing on the ground. Make it look like they're standing in it, and so they're really placing it so that they're, you know, the grass is going up around them. That they're like almost like they're sinking a little bit into the ground. And that usually makes it look more authentic than like they're almost hovering on the ground. Okay, back over here. Bit too contrasty on some of this. Like the stuff facing upwards, you don't need a black shadow on that. That can have the lighter tone there. And then you got a really, really eye, but it doesn't indicate that it's glowing. So it really, if it is just a white eye, then it at least needs to be following the same shading as an actual eye that would be white in that sort of scenario. So it can be a white eye, but it just allow it to drop back into that shadow. Throwing just faint cool tones into some of that red and some of those blue tones catching in the black feathers. Not a lot of big changes. I think this is a really strong piece, but if you were going to get it published or used in a, you know, some sort of gaming venue, book venue, then you want that little extra pop of color, a little bit more control of the values there. I would suggest, you know, throw in another day or two on it and just step it up another notch. Yeah. Really good design. I think it's one of the best designs for the head and their overall structure of the body. Yeah, good stuff, Leonardo. Jonathan says, awesome advices once again. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I will work on it tomorrow. Okay, I look forward to it. Second part. Ben, we got a couple of people in UK, huh? Luckily, while your streaming time coincided with Matt getting home from work. Cool, man. Matt, glad you could join. Ben. Marcel. Oh, yes, I remember the sketch. Yeah, you had a whole collection of concepts. Okay. Really nice shapes here. Okay. Let's pull in. All the viewers can get a good look at what's going on here. Really nice shape work going on. Good flow to the body. How can we make it a more successful overall image? Okay. Well, we got a couple of choices. Again, we're going to go back to values. Some of the values are handled really well. Some of it, not as much. That's not the color I needed. So the color. Okay, so some of the things that are not working so well are these background spires. because essentially they're the same value as the sky. And see, the value range of the sky is medium dark to white or light. And I think that's a bit broad right now. Now, he stands out well because he's all setting in the medium to medium darks. Or darks. I guess it's darks to medium. Yeah. And what we want to do is make that read a little bit better. So let's turn that off and grab a new layer. Oh, this is another one that overall has a really nice execution. Marcel, I'll go ahead and say that to you right off the bat. It has a nice execution. It has a good, clean brush strokes to it. Things are very controlled. All I'm saying is let's adjust where you handle some of the values here so that all that will be paying off. I want all those beautiful detail and control to be working. Now what we have before us is a choice between having a lighten things up or having ambient. I kind of like the light source. You have like the cast light going here, you've got the light sort of hitting this, and then some of that's in shadow. If that's the case, then let's get these guys going off in shadow, right? And then it will accentuate this beautiful light pattern that you have where the foreground is being lit by some sunbeam that's breaking through the clouds. But that is all going to be silhouetted. Now, we're not talking black. When I say silhouetted, it means that it's being darkened down and the values are being flattened towards the darker side, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's black. So, like this guy back here will be considerably darker. And then we go the other route with the other side, right? So here, we want to sell that that light is coming through here. So that can be catching the light. You got just enough green there. So some of this is catching the light. And then sort of losing it, right? That's sort of where it gets off of the light path. We don't have too much past there. There we go. Maybe just a bit of that's catching light too. And then what we want to do is bring the value down a little bit of this sky. I like the idea that you've used a couple of light spots in order to help pull the contrast up around the character. But we've got to minimize it a little bit. It's so contrasty overall. I'm going to bring that light down a little bit. Or darken that down. Yeah. Pull that sky value towards the lighter side. We're trying to lower that value overall range a little bit. Another place where we want that to be a silhouette rather than a... I mean, to be darker than the background rather than lighter. I didn't mention the concept that there be a flock of birds. I don't know if it's little ones of him or maybe it's other birds that are kind of like, you know, cows. Like cows have those birds that follow them around and they eat the bugs that try to land on the cows. So it's a sort of symbiosis thing. Maybe that's how these things work, right? They follow him around for protection, and then they eat whatever the big guy doesn't eat. You know. And then if we do that, we are losing quite a bit in the character itself. So, you know, I would suggest doing a little bit of forced value change so that some of it gets lighter, some of it gets darker. Also consider doing some color adjustment so that, whoa, that's way too much. I need like a fifth of that. Maybe the wing has just a bit of that in it. And then different points of this have slightly more color to differentiate the different sections of it. Like the claws could get a bit more tan. And then the legs, they are that bluish tone. And then the tail, some of those earmarked red tones there. Little stuff just helps separate the different pieces of the body. On the tail, consider what you want here. I would go with sort of dark bluish tone that we could create. It's almost a dark dull violet, and that would stand out well against the lighter stone and the grass. Right. Now this feels a bit odd to me that the eye just feels like it's so far forwards, and I want to move it back. It like at first I take it as almost more of a nostril thing because it's so far forwards given the size of the overall head that I want to see it like back here. Just that's where I would expect to see it. So I'm gonna just tell you that. I know that it probably looks fine to you, but that's what I would expect to see, something more like that. Yeah. I think that would help. I think that would help quite a bit, actually. The other thing is, if you're going to add these guys in here, which I'm a fan of these guys, they're fun, then use them in a way that a lot of other things can't be used, or what it allows you to do, which is allows you to create patterns. It allows you to lead the eye in places. So you have, you know, a group of these things kind of circling this guy. And it doesn't have to be an obvious line, but we can get the eye from out of the corners of images and lead them back into the scene by having these things fly. It's also a way that you could build up more action, like he's roaring, right? And these guys look like they are completely not even bothered with it. But if you wanted to really ramp up how ferocious this thing's roar is, you got all these guys taking off. Flying out, flying out, flying out, flying out. He startles them, right? And they're all just taking off, taking flight. Otherwise, yeah, you've got a disparity between this thing is loud and threatening, and then all the other creatures in the scene are like, yeah, whatever. So they don't have the same message. Just think about how you want to handle that. Okay, man, I really like it. I think this is a solid image. Punch those colors up a little bit. Make use of the silhouettes for some things, but lit things, but light the other things, and allow them to play to different strengths. Yep. Marco, now we're to yours. Like an hour and a half later. Okay, Marco. Cool. Okay, let's pull this up here. Very tan color scheme. This is almost getting so far as to feel like a desert. Like really, really more desert than like a foggy scene. A foggy scene, yeah, I'm going to suggest adjusting that color scheme. Much cooler. Okay, obviously not a big change and made it very quickly. Okay. Alright, so you got this guy in here. It's still another scale thing. When I look at it, I initially just think that this thing is little. 'Cause I don't know what this is. Maybe it's supposed to be like a cow or a deer. I mean, I don't know. It could be anything. Not anything, obviously, but I don't know what that is. Another thing is, this is the height of grass in your image. And this is the height of the guy. So the guy is like 6 times taller than grass, which isn't a great indicator. And maybe it's supposed to be tall grass, but I don't know. I mean, generally people just assume the most normal answer, which would be normal grass is maybe that tall, which makes this guy feel small. Yeah, almost. I kind of feel like we need man-sized mausoleum entrance doorway here, right? Grass is smaller, shorter. That would help too. If this was a human skull, that would be one thing, right? Because we know the size of a human skull. But creatures differ in size so much, we can't really know. Another scene where... Oops. That top third of the image really isn't doing anything for us. So I would consider just getting rid of some of that. And the mist here is kind of nice. Like, you've got the different layers of the mist. Compositionally, you're creating a design here of this. Then you follow it with another one of this, and then follow it with another one of this. And that's not real useful. So what we would be better is to have it like that. Right? Where they offset each other. They're creating a pattern like that. You can also be getting them closer together as they go away so that it mimics a bit more perspective to it. And if we were to intersect the next line, here, so you could just add in another line across there, right? And that kind of helps things continue. This is a great place, like if you wanted to go with, tombstone sort of things. Tombstones are also something that we know the general size of. I mean, you could throw a tombstone up here, right? That would help too. This all feels pretty much, it's very line heavy, which is not inherently bad, but I feel like you're trying to do this realistically, and that means that we don't need a line outside of everything. We have like a line going outside of the arms. We have a line on every one of these transitions. So instead of trying to use a line, let's just let the values separate themselves. Let the colors separate themselves by their natural tone, rather than trying to do so with a line. It's another place where we can use a bit more color. Overlay. Get that vulture sort of look. We need that iconic red pop in there. Yep, that should help you out. Look at the other ones where I talk about, you know, getting the whole thing a bit darker. I think you could tone down all of the lights on the guy, so overall he's much darker than the surrounding area. Mikawai. Your file doesn't want to open. Okay, you've gone much more vulture. Yeah, this is far more bird than it is dragon. I think for this particular commission, it would be, could we get a bit more dragon back in this? If this was an actual commission, you'd probably be asked for that. And I like, it's almost like a documentary photo where the background's really out of focus and you've got a nice clear shot of action of this front thing, and that works really well with like the depth. Again, another one, no scale reference. I mean, I look at this naturally, I'm equating it to a turkey because it seems turkey-esque, vulture-esque, so I'm going to assume it to be in that size. So unless you give me something like a tree or some gravestones, I really don't know how big this thing is supposed to be. So consider that if you want to make sure you convey that to your viewers. Also, if you want to move away from the bird, then what you can do is allow the wings. I don't know if I've seen wings work this way or how well it would work this way, but like you have both mammalian and reptilian wings. So like the front part of the wing is reptilian in that it has, you know, like draped skin. But then it has feathers on part of it, and then the further it goes out, it becomes more bird. So it has that sort of, okay, that color changer is not working for me. It keeps grabbing every other color than the color that I need. So it's going to follow that sort of pattern, right? Then it gets feathers. There's always feathers on the top, up here. And the feathers fade out as it goes down. If you want to get back to slightly more that dragon side, I think that would help. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if he's throwing his head forwards, which I think is what he's doing, I think he's moving forwards, then that hair wouldn't be going that way because that indicates that he just came from that direction. The hair would be going this way because there's going to be dragon behind him. So keep that in mind. Something a little bit more interesting with the tail. Some feathers stuck at the end of it. Some ridging on it. Something like that. Right? Just the rat's tail was kind of odd. It doesn't really match into anything else on the character. Or even if you just made it, you know, go to where it's nice and red at the end, you know, and then it has some of that weird multi kind of coloring or something on it. So it at least ties the two elements together. I think you're in a good place, and that it's really up to you what you... I mean, it's practically just a finished image as it is. And if you want to take it a different direction, you can feel, you know, free to do that. I don't think there's anything, like, really wrong with this as it is. It can certainly take more work if you want it to, but it does have a nice little finished package to it. Pyro. What we got here, Pyro? Okay. Yeah, this calls back to one of the first images where the wings are in a defensive kind of resting mode, where it would be more dramatic if you were to open the wings up, or if they were in some different position. You know, maybe the wings are going out behind him. That could be kind of cool. You know, if they're doing that, that would be one thing. They could be opened up this way. I'm Batbird. Vathut the Batbird. I'm joining the Bat family as their mascot. Batman. He thinks he has a copyright on everything Bat. That'd be funny if the Joker started keeping a pet bat. You know? That'd be kind of cool. He's like a parrot, but he just keeps a bat, like sits on his shoulder. He feeds it. I wonder if they've ever done that in the comics. This is my brain starting to get a little random. Yeah, I see, something like that would feel way more energetic, have a lot more energy to it, be more threatening. And you also have to think about what's it for. I mean, if this was a commission for a game, they want punch, they want impact, they want something that has emotion to it. And this is very passive. It's a very passive sort of positioning. And there's nothing moving. There's no aggression. It's just this thing kind of sunning itself on this rock. Whereas this he's either threatening with the size, or he's thinking about taking off. It's just more active. And I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm not saying that this is bad. This can be exactly what you want with the right image. But usually games don't go for the passive, quiet scene. They want that punch to them, right? So it's easy to fall back into quiet, non-active. But you normally have to learn how to make things more active and breathe more energy into something. Okay, what else? I think once you get past the rib cage there, we can start slimming the body up. And I'm not sure how this works, because we've got both feet on this side of the rock. I think this foot probably needs to go away. And then we just need to see it kind of going out there, and maybe a claw. Right, but to have the whole thing on this side, I don't see how you'd even be balancing. We just kind of see the silhouette of that leg back there, right? Something maybe a bit more like that. Again, maybe you're trying to make it where like his chest is sitting on it. That's probably what you're doing. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Like, he's kind of setting his chest on there. In which case, I still think that this needs to be moved. We just need to establish maybe that rock looks a little higher. Like I said, you know, it looks like he's sitting in the ground. Like, really push the two of those up against each other. And then we can add, you know, some of the claws just coming around the edge. And that would be about all you could get on that. The tail is really tight against the rock. Like, he's clinging for dear life, like he's really trying to use it to grip. Consider making it a bit more free, so that it doesn't look like he's, you know, hanging tightly to it. It's just, it's free floating. He's kind of letting it swivel around. Again, adding, the term I use in the newest chapter, I had to think about how to explain some things, is potential energy. You're adding potential energy into it. Maybe it's not something that's really moving that much right now, but it's something that could. It's something that could fall. It's something that could move. And even that alone is a nice change. I like the iridescence on the feathers. I think that's good. Just the basic background is nice. These are perhaps just a little too uniform. Consider consolidating, like, into, you know, a bigger one, or have a bit more size difference between some of these, right? Okay, good stuff, Pyro. Good solid image to be getting on with. I think we can punch it up a bit more though, and, you know, break up the uniformity of the background, rework at the wings, and yeah, and rework this with that foot underneath it. That just seems weird. Might want to look to see how, like, a different kind of bird set, that or how a lizard sets. I'm not sure the best thing to look at for the reference on that, but that is what is needed. Ricardo. Okay. Put this up. Okay, you're going with a very Arctic, cold place. Cold is fine. Snow is fine. But the whole thing is a bit too happy. Yeah, this whole thing is just a bit too bright. So if we were to levels this, bring it down. I don't know why I'm talking like this. No, that's not what I need. It hits about 2 hours, my brain starts getting tired, and then it starts behaving weirdly. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is just start by muting that down a little bit, and get that off of so much white. That much white just makes it feel so positive. Another thing where, if this was used on a card, you have literally just got all of the most important information and put it in 1/4 of the space. This is all just to support that. This should just exist in the area that thing is not existing in. It's not about the location. It's about the creature. It is a creature card. So this would need to be redone. Like, that needs to be rescaled. You might be able to get away with something like that, right? So you still got some of this in the background. If you want that back there, you can get that. Those mountains can kind of just blend together. It's fine. Okay. Now this thing feels a lot like, just kind of like a chicken calling out. He doesn't seem threatening. He just seems like he's just kind of chilling on this rock. So Again, I feel like maybe you're just trying to take this in a different direction because it's quite a ways from what the outline called for. The outline called for something that was threatening, something that could eat you, something that you would want to run from, and this doesn't feel like that. This just feels like some creature that's chilling on a rock that's calling out. So it would need an entirely different stance in order to have an aggressive feel to it. Probably it not laying down. Ricardo says, I was in doubt of sending you the whole image or just a cutout of the creature. Well, that's the thing, Ricardo, is that the whole image should be the creature. That's the point of the image. So, just, I mean, it's like, what is this adding? What's this adding to the narrative? How is this adding to the creature? And you've got to have the priorities of what is the image about. The image is about him. So what is this doing to add to him? Well, nothing. The more that you add out here is subtracting away from the point of the image. So the whole image should be him. Now, the reason that there is some background, and the reason I mentioned that the Soaring Crypts is because it places him in a location. He should be known to be in a location. But if just more is better, then that's an entirely different idea. Then you've moved away from this is a creature image to this is just a scene. And you handle those differently, and the goals of them are differently. It becomes about a creature image is specific. It is about a creature. A scene is non-specific. It's about everything in general. It has no particular focal point, or a creature does have a particular focal point. A art director wouldn't accept this as a creature image. They would consider taking that as a creature image because it's about the creature. Yeah. So hopefully, I don't say that to me. I don't say that to like be mean, but it's something worth keeping in mind because knowing what the goal of the image is going to help answer a lot of your questions throughout the painting process. Because if you know, well, is this helping reach that goal? Is this necessary for that goal? If the answer is no, then you don't need it. And then also just recognizing what the focal point is. Again, I just finished writing a section on focal points. And is it specific? Is it non-specific? Yeah. This is another one. If he closed his mouth, that makes the eye on the lower half of the head, which is weird. So let's move that eye up here where you would expect it to be on the top half. Yeah, that would be a bit better. And now, if we want to make him more threatening, let's beat that up a little bit. Consider some of the 12. Some of the kind of ugly, foldy skin that you get on a vulture. Yeah. And it could have some little tendrils, saliva, all that sort of thing. Also, if he's doing that, he probably has a tongue. Swatches, now with sound effects. A little saliva coming out. Okay, so you got that. That would help. Having, like, some of these feathers, thing about feathers is Try doing a couple of them that are maybe a little bit bigger, that have more detail in them. And then you can do half as much detail on the other ones, and you just kind of assume that detail to be there. I like this idea of working in some of the broken spots in the wings. Make sure that the back wings, though, would actually allow for that spot. Like, there's a lot of these back wings that I don't know how they would leave that hole there. You literally have other feathers right there that would be filling that hole up. So you're probably going to have breaks more along the, you know, other areas closer to the outside than in the inside, because they all have to join on the inside at some point there. Yeah. Okay, man. There's quite a few adjustments to take in, and I think that'll get you going on the right path. Travis. What do we got? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, really heavy with the blacks on this. This is super contrasty. What we want to do is lessen the contrast. We don't need it quite so heavy. Again, we're thinking about a really atmospheric kind of misty scene. Let's get that set that to darken. And no, that's not what I meant. This big feather is like when you pull out, it just complicates it. We don't really need that one way up there if it's not going to be visible enough. Now I could see where maybe the light is catching it, and it literally has light catching it, and so you have detail. It shows up because it's lighter. But I don't even think that that's necessarily worth keeping. I would just take that out. You can have some feathers maybe at a medium distance to us, and you know, maybe that big, but having it so big and right there in the front, and basically it's just a black fuzz. Good idea, but not the best execution. So, yeah, if we put that in here. Yeah, let's look for ways to build up. Oh, yeah. Oh, let's go. There's so many ways that I can go about trying to set the layers up and stuff. I'm just trying to think through it very quickly. You know, I'm trying to build up the distance. And what you want to do is, it's forced atmosphere. Like, realistically, things would probably not get this atmospheric this quickly. But you want to, because like it looks better for the image. It's like that back wing can be further away. Is it that much further away? No, not really. But it looks cool, so think about it. Maybe add just another background tone, a little bit different color. Again, you have a lot of contrast on this head, as if this has a lot of direct light on it. Remember, we're just thinking about occlusion light, general soft light. Now, if you want, like we did on one of the other images, if you want some color hitting it, or some light hitting it, you can. That's probably the better answer, is you still get that red to pop, and say that there's a light breaking through that's kind of hitting that. But still, the rest of this needs to be brightened up a little bit. And just because you raise the value doesn't mean you necessarily have to go in and start adding detail everything. It just means that the overall, the black level needs to be moved up a little bit. Or if you want to add some sort of, you know, extra light to it, you can do that as well. Like there's some sort of light breaking through that's catching the tops of this, right? So, you know, that changes it up. That's a good option also. So, that light probably needs to be right up near white. This is one of those, I think of it as a lightning flash. Like if a lightning flash went off, it just way overwhelms all the other lights. And it's just stark bright against everything. And maybe you would get like a little glint off the eyeball or something. But it would get a lot of texture in there and allow that to show up. Oh, wrong way. And all the stuff back there can be brightened up because there's some light coming out of there. Never underestimate how bright you can get a particularly dark scene to actually look if you use the light correctly. If you just put it everywhere, it won't look like a dark scene. But if you use it in the right way, you can get away with quite a lot of light in a fairly dark scene. The case that comes to mind is in Lord of the Rings, when they leave Hobbiton in the first one, Fellowship of the Ring, and they're being chased. They're out in the woods, and the Nazgul, right, on the horse, comes up over the hill, and he's in the woods, and there's this light shining there, silhouetting the Nazgul. Like, that light is really, really light, but you still take it as a night scene. You still buy it. Because even though there's no way the moonlight can be bright enough to light that scene like that, you still take it. So yeah, just if you use it artistically, you know. So this is more the direction that I would be thinking, Travis. Hopefully that gets a bit of the better mood. It's darker, it's foggier, it's more atmospheric, it's a bit more threatening. It removes the feather. I just don't see it. I mean, in the right way, it could be useful. I just don't think that that's necessarily the right thing. I think a few more medium-sized feathers would be better than the massive one feather. And I think the falling feathers is a good idea, and it's worth keeping. But let's just adjust how you go about doing it. Yeah. Right. And last one up is William. Okay, William, what you got? Okay, William doesn't look like he got to a finished version of the image, but I'm liking what he's got going so far. You've got a tilted camera angle to indicate some sort of off kilter. Maybe the viewer's starting to run. Maybe he just got startled. That's cool. The character is very horizontal. This is another one that not a great use of the landscape or the composition, where a good 40% of the image is not adding anything to the image, and it's not being utilized by the character or the creature. So that would be one of the first things that I'd want to do, is address that. I mean, the simplest way is to do what I've tried to do earlier, which is just copy and paste and, you know, enlarge it. Like if we stood him up a little bit more, which I don't think would be a bad idea there. That would utilize a bit more space. Maybe we don't need to see all of that wing, right? You do a bit more of this. Let's take just a little of that tilt out. So there, I mean, we still get some foreground area to play with. You can, you know, bust in your rocks and your grasses and your moss and whatever that stuff is that you want there. But we get a lot more of the creature. And he was really, really squatty. So I think the slight vertical stretch is a nice thing here. Let's see. I like some of the shapes going on. The way that it looks like he's using his wings and kind of reaching out with his two little claws. What confuses me a little bit with the design is, let's go back here, is that usually this would be on the end, like the feathers thing out. Like that would be the feathers bit of his wing. But you've got this actually looking like it extends further than that. So consider moving the claws up here, or the wing needs to go back, you know, from that point instead of reaching back this way. Or if you want to do that and then put the claws over here, that could also be good, maybe even better. Yeah. And that wing feels pretty small compared to this one. Maybe it's just, again, like, let's move those claws over, and then maybe like these claws are over here instead of back there. So they're at the end of the next joint out here. Yeah. I was just thinking something like this shape is pretty simple. It's not real aggressive. It's just a big curve sort of shape. I was thinking of where could we get something a bit more aggressive on it. You know, if we were going to do the kind of the bat wing, dragon wing thing, then the serration design of the ends of the wings is more aggressive than just kind of this looks like tattered fabric. But it should stick with this basic design where it's very taut in between the joints. You can kind of think of like webbing on a, you know, like a duck foot, right? You got the webbing in between there. Now it can tear, yeah, but it's going to tear kind of similar way that fabric is. Tight fabric is going to tear in those sort of ovals. This is tearing more like fabric. Yeah, it's like unraveling sort of. So consider that. Maybe you want to go that direction with it. Tusk aren't a bad idea, but they should seem anatomically useful. like, I don't know how that would be useful to him. If they started down here and came up, so they were kind of like a boar, right? That would be useful. Like, we can understand why that would work. You know, something like that, and then you've got this one. It kind of curls back on itself at that angle, but coming here, then and coming out and up. If that makes sense, kind of doing that sort of thing. Like, that seems a bit more logical. If you want to go that direction with it. These are all just, it's like the super, super basic tusk kind of shape. Or at least, you know, give me a more interesting kind of curve to it. You know, give a little twist on the end, like come back this way and let it curve out. At least it's something different. Then like with the beak, maybe the beak comes up here, and then it kind of creates a different pattern of how it blends into the skull instead of just the perfect little beak shape. And then on these things too, maybe they kind of have a more interesting, aggressive shape as they blend into the face instead of just the perfect round thing there. So those small changes, even that, just makes it more unique, makes it a little more threatening. And we're seeing the face from 95% straight on, which means that this bottom part is like his jaw is being pushed over so that we can see it. What we need to do is push it back. So it would really be like that joint isn't going to move up there, but we could open it down there a bit more. Hopefully that makes sense. Like this is way kind of like stuck over to the side. Yeah, I think he'd be, you know, more on that range. So you can kind of see that. Okay, yeah, I'm not really gonna, we've already touched a lot about values and kind of lighting for this particular environment, so I'll let all that previous talk touch on that for you. And with the rock stuff, you've got this strong horizontal going on here. Consider putting the rocks at the opposite angle in order to offset that. So consider having like the rocks going this way in order to kind of offset the angle that we're looking at the image. And it can be a sort of striation thing where maybe the rocks here are all striated at an angle. So they, when they break off, they create that sort of angled pattern. And they don't have to be at the exact same angle, but they could be at similar angles, all kind of following that idea. So, okay, well that wraps it up for the reviews this time. As I said, I'll do a quick run over for what the challenge will be for the new challenge, which is Seed of Renewal. We're going to be doing a magical seed of some size, which is up to you, and it is spawning out a life-giving magic that is bringing into life fauna, just like plants, in this barren terrain. What is that barren terrain? Is it a desert? Is it a volcanic area? Is it inside of a cave? It's up to you. I don't specify what that is. And what kind of plants is it? Is it grass? Is it vines? Is it trees? Are there budding flowers? What kind of colors are involved? I'm thinking primarily greens as the main color for that, but you might want to throw in another accent color, like some sort of violets or yellows for the plants. What color is the magic itself? Maybe it's yellow or green or blue or whatever. Again, up to you. You got a week for the next live stream, so if you want to join this challenge, then you need to become a patron if you're not already. And you will be able to see the upload folder when I create the link for it, and I'll put it out on Patreon. And you can, as soon as you join, you will be able to see the link, and you'll be able to join in when you want to submit your stuff. And then there will be 2 weeks between the sketch and the final because I'll be traveling. So, yeah. Yep, that's it. Thank you very much for everyone who has decided to help support the channel by becoming a patron, joining in the challenge. Thank you for everybody else that is tuning in, and yeah, just appreciate it. Hopefully you guys got what you needed in order to help continue working on your images. And as always, the Facebook group is there to get feedback, and if you want to just get some questions answered, you're curious about other stuff about swatches, put them out there, and we ought to be able to take care of them. Okay, well, that's it for now. Till you see you guys next time. Keep drawing.